And so, my dear ones, what we're looking at today from that beautiful book of Eric Butterworth's, we are seeing ourselves, we're seeing all life in a prayerful state. Now, prayer is not uncommon to us. We're not unaware of prayer. Indeed, many of us were raised very much with prayer in mind. We were taught prayers from a very early age. It's an automatic thing with me now, even still, when my head hits the pillow and now I lay me down to sleep. And so some of those are very deeply imprinted within us, some of those prayers. And as we went through our childhood, we knew that there were certain times when we prayed, and they were different to every other time. There were certain times when we moved into a different sense and sensibility because we were praying, and it was different from other sense and sensibilities throughout our day or throughout our week or whatever. And then as we grew deeper into the awareness of what it was to be a spiritual being, we understood that our spiritual lives were not centered around saying prayers or getting our prayers in or making sure we said our prayers and so on and so forth. We entered into the higher understanding and realization that we were a prayer ourselves, that each one of us is a prayer. Each one of us is the spoken prayer of Spirit. Each one of us is the love song of Spirit. Each one of us is the result of the desire of Spirit to know itself in a very unique and formed way by means of you and by means of me. So prayerfulness is something that is in every aspect of our being and in every moment of our lives. Prayerfulness is just a state and an awareness of being, a lifestyle, that's all. And it's not just something that we do once in a while. It's not just something that happens every now and again. It's not something we go to when we're challenged or afraid or scared. It's what we are. It's the amazing grace of who and what we are. Each one of us a beautiful prayer, just like a candle always lit, each one of us. Now, I don't know about your life, but I do know about mine, and sometimes the candle, the prayer that I am, has a little flicker. And sometimes it's a roaring conflagration that would burn up anything in and around it. And all the various stages in between. As a small child, I was taught at a very early age in kindergarten that prayer is the raising of the mind and heart to God, to adore and praise God and to thank God for God's blessings. And I was taught that we should pray every morning and every evening and in all times of difficulty and temptation. And I was taught that the way we should pray was with a consciousness of gratitude and thanksgiving, and a realization of the presence of God, and always with the idea in mind to be one with God's will. Taught a lot as a small child about how to and when to and what to. And that stands us all in good stead. That's the building blocks that we used as a small child. But now here we are, all grown up, and we're left to unfold spiritually in a way that challenges us and challenges old beliefs and calls us to broaden our horizons and expand the ideas that we picked up in childhood, and to make this thing called prayer a fuller and a deeper and a richer and more expanded experience in our lives. And to know it's not something we go to, but prayer is something we are. We are. Because of the power and the presence of the indwelling Christedness that is always with us and around us and about us. So what we do is sink ourselves more deeply and fully into that prayerful state when we consciously decide that prayer is what we are, and that prayer is available to us at all times, and is a very real and present help, just like God is a very real and present help all of the time. And we come to that through our own sense of prayerfulness, And so There are many spiritual practices that we engage in and we have tried out and that we still are engaged in, and all of them work differently for each one of us, and all of us must find the spiritual practice that works for each and every one of us as we go about the business of life and living, whatever that is. As far as the conscious awareness of being the prayer of life itself, and we are the prayer of life itself. So if somebody picked up you as a prayer book and looked into you, what would they be seeing? What kind of prayer would they find in there? If they picked you up as a prayer book and looked into you, what would that look like? I often ask myself the question, and it causes me to scurry and make sure that what they're looking into at least will do absolutely no harm, whatever good it might do, you see. And so that's the high calling that prayerfulness calls us to, because prayerfulness causes us to be who we are in truth, the spiritual, realizing, individualizing expression of the divine. And that's big. That's very big. There's no room in there for being less than in any way, and there's no room in there for causing any harm in any way to anything or anyone throughout the day. So how do we set that up and how do we go about it? Well, we've got plenty of examples from all kinds of wonderful people who have managed to do that. And I remember reading in the book that we're looking at now, Eric Butterworth's book, and he's saying that he was listening to a conversation once with Robert Frost on the radio, and the interviewer was asking him, how is it that you stay so beautifully optimistic and wonderfully high-spirited? What is that about? And he kind of was, pondered a little bit and thought about it, and then he said, my life as such depends upon two things, just two things. And he was asked what they were, and he says, well, in the morning, the first thing I do when I get up is make my bed. And then the second thing I do is make up my mind. And my life rests on those two things. He says, as I'm making my bed and smoothing out the sheets, and as I'm unfolding the covers very carefully, and as I'm carefully putting it all together, I'm doing the same with my thoughts in my mind. I'm smoothing out the thoughts in my mind. I'm unfolding the ideas that are going on, and I'm making up my mind about how my day is going to be. And that's how it works for me. Those golden moments for me are the key to the way I live my life. And another person who had a very serious illness and disease said that as soon as he woke up in the morning, he went straight into knowing what he was in truth and not what he was in fact. The fact was that he was coping with a serious disease. But what he was in truth was the expression, the full and whole and perfect expression of the life that lived itself within him. And he identified with that. And he did that for a length of time, a good 5 minutes or more. And when he was settled in that, and when anything else wanted to enter in, he just went deeper into the statement of the truth that he was. And in that way, he came to terms with that situation, and he was healed of the disease that was pronounced by means of him having it. And he said that's what he continues to do every moment he wakes up, and the first thing he wakes up in the morning is to go there and to recognize himself in truth, not by fact, but by truth, and stay in that until it has deepened and resonated within him, and he can say a yes to it. And then, of course, we are told and invited that the first 5 minutes of the day and the last 5 minutes of the day are the most important minutes of the day, because therein lies how we're going to be. So when we set ourselves up in the first 5 minutes of the day, and we're only asked to do this for 5 minutes, for heaven's sakes, and you don't even have to get out of the bed to do it. You can be in the bed doing it. And it's funny, I resonated with the making of the bed, because that's the one thing I always do as soon as I get out of bed. I make my bed. And I tell myself, if my bed is in order, my life is in order, and everything else is in order. But everything else in the house can be upside down and inside out, but that bed has to be made. That bed has to be made as soon as I get out of it. And so within that, the bed is very important. It becomes a very important spiritual tool in our lives. You know, if we set the intention in the morning and then last thing at night before we fall asleep, is to be in that awareness that now I'm giving myself up, I'm surrendering myself into that awesome, amazing, infinite beingness of spirit itself, and I can safely give myself up to it, and I can know that as I sleep, I can be mended and fixed and healed of anything I think I need mending and fixing and healing of, or I can be inspired, I can be greatly inspired, I can have some great revelation happen to me in my sleep. And I can know it's the best part of my day, actually, when I'm sleeping, because I'm in non-resistance to the good that can take place while I am asleep. Because I've set my intention as I'm falling asleep to be open and receptive to my good, however I conceive that good to be, knowing I'm in safekeeping and I'm in the heart of the divine itself, cradled and cared for and loved and cherished and safe. And when you do that, I'm telling you, insomnia soon leaves you. It takes a while to get into the practice of it, but when you do, it's the most beauteous thing that you could experience. And the going to bed becomes a delight. Going to bed becomes a delight. And waking up in the morning is a delight too, because your first thought is, oh my gosh. For me, sometimes it's, I woke up, or God woke up in me today, and now I choose to wake up in God. That's one of my thoughts. Or, this is the day that the Lord has made, I am glad and rejoice in it. Whatever it is that comes to mind, but it's always going to be something that's going to connect me with that which is greater than I am, connect me with the moreness of myself, with the greatness of myself, with the sanctity of myself, with the soul of myself, with the spirit of myself, with the truth of myself. And I'm going to let those be the first thoughts in my mind in a new day, and I'm going to get up with those in mind. And as I'm making my bed, now since I read that, I will be unfolding and uncrinkling all the things that may want to enter in. And I say a gentle no to those things, and I say a tender yes to what I've just stated and set for myself. It's a wondrous thing. And the most beauteous thing of prayerfulness, if we stay consciously in it, is that we're in the Christ mind, we're in the Buddha mind, we're in the great void that is conscious consciousness. And within that framework, there is no room for the ego to take control and upset and disturb and cause all kinds of shenanigans as a result of it. Because in ego, Christ consciousness cannot be experienced. In ego, the Buddha mind cannot be entered. In ego, the great void, which is free of content, conscious consciousness, cannot be experienced or expressed. I am either a host to spirit, or I'm a hostage to ego. I cannot be both at the same time. So the whole idea is to be a host to spirit, and in prayerfulness, that's where we are. And in prayerfulness, that's where we stay. So every moment of my life is filled with prayer. Every aspect of my life is filled with prayer. Every single thing has to do with prayer. A good one, a bad one, indifferent one, whatever. But nevertheless, prayer. Prayer. Prayer is an energy. It's power. It's grace itself. It's upliftment. It's advancement. It is healing. It is unification. It is at one-ment. That's what it is. And I don't have to go to any holy place to be in prayer. I don't have to go to any holy tree, any holy shrine, any holy well to be more deeply in prayer. All of that is right here within me, in the tabernacle of my mind and in the cradle of my heart. That's where it all is. That's where it all is. So I go within, and the more I go within consciously, the more prayerful I am, and the more blessed I am in experience and in activity, and the more blessings I take wherever I am. Because if I show up as a prayer, wherever I am. I'm showing up as a blessing. And if I'm showing up as a blessing, I'm supporting life, I'm advancing life, I'm lightening life, I'm brightening life. I am raising the consciousness and the vibration of life when I show up in blessing as a prayer. And that's the challenge for you and for me in this day, in this coming week. To be the prayer that we are created to be the blessing that we were already anointed to be that raising agent of grace in life and living, so that everyone who touches our lives and everything that touches our lives is blessed as a consequence and leaves your presence more enriched than it found our presence. That's a beautiful thought. It's a delightful thought. And it's one that I'm sure every single one of us in this room would love to be able to say, that I am that constant blessing, that constant energy that raises and advances, and the beauty and the grace that flows through and out of that is unimaginable. So you and I are going to remember this tonight when we're going to bed and ready to fall asleep. We're going to remember this tomorrow morning when we wake up. And we're going to make a decision to choose this day the blessing or the curse, as the scripture says. Choose this day the blessing of conscious living or the curse of random living that could get us into all kinds of trouble. What is it to be? How do we wish our lives to be? How do people read you as a prayer right now? If people were told you are the prayer of life and light itself, how would they be reading you? Would they be able to say, yes, you are, indeed, that's what you are? Or would they say, you're kidding me? Yeah. And pigs can fly. What would their response be if you were introduced as a living, light-filled prayer, a blessing that is here to know the truth and be the truth, so that the truth can set not only you free, but another free to know the very same thing about themselves. All kinds of misconceptions out there. And let's not be part of the misconception that is out there, because you and I are quite capable of making absolute statements that have no validity and no truth to them. None whatsoever, and yet we state them as though they're the God's gospel truth. God, help us, we do. You and I know very little, much of anything when it comes to anybody else's life. We hardly know enough about our own lives to keep our own lives tracking. So, if I want to be prayerfulness wherever I show up, that can have nothing to do with any kind of negativity, any kind of negative affirmation, any kind of depleting gossip. Gossip is very good when it's good gossip, when it cheers people up and makes people smile and laugh, and it's doing good. But gossip that is depleting, and gossip that is draining, and gossip that is in any way negative is not. And you and I know we're all challenged in that area of gossip. And even if it is something that you were told, and even if it is true, how dare any one of us pass that on to somebody else? It's not our business to do so. And if you and I are called to prayerfulness, as we are, if you and I are called to manifest the manifestation of God, which is Emmanuel, God with us, if you are called to that, and you are, and so am I, then we have no business hanging around in any arena of any kind of negativity, especially if we are truth students desiring to unfold spiritually and realize the best of ourselves and live from the best and the highest of ourselves, the great self itself. And to do that, it simply means I have to be an open vessel, an open channel for Spirit just to show up through me, and that is an awesome responsibility. It has nothing to do with me and my ego's expression in any way. Nothing to do with my personality, my ego, my humanity, nothing. It has to do with me as the formed vessel of Spirit, as its own channel, its own passageway for Spirit itself to show up by means of me. That's all it has to do with. That's what the spiritual life is about. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not authentically spiritual. I'm not. Now, I may be not authentically spiritual because I'm just unconscious. I don't know any better. But if I know better, and I'm still being inauthentic spiritually, then much will be exacted of me, and much will be expected of me on a higher realm. So I would just simply say, in the morning time, come into that awareness that right where I am, God is, and where God is, every opportunity and every possibility is. And that it is the desire of the divine that I should flourish and that I should thrive, that I should have life and have it in abundance, that my joy may be complete, and that I should know a peace that passes understanding. And that's the only divine design for me. That's the only will of the divine for me. No other will for me except that I should flourish and thrive, and that I should be the blessing and the prayer that I am created to be. And in so doing, be blessed in my own life and bless all life besides. Oh my gosh, how huge a calling that is, how impossible it seems to the ego. It always seems impossible to the ego, and that's why it balks at it and resists it. That's why it gives us so much grief and so much trouble. You know, who do you think you are? What makes you think you can be all of that? That's ridiculous. Look at your past. Look at all your failures. Look at all the times you got it wrong, and so on and so forth. Well, right here and right now in a second, I can stop all of that. I can come right out of my history, right off my past, leave it behind me where it belongs, never look back over my shoulder so it doesn't paralyze me anymore like Lot's wife. And so I can stand now in that amazing grace, knowing that right here and right now I have everything I need in order to turn around and change around if I have to do that. And I have everything available to me because our God is a very real and present help, always available, and only awaits our availability, as the scripture says. God is awaiting your availability, not the other way around. God awaits our availability. To what? To know the truth that sets us free. What truth? That right where I am, God is, and where God is, all is well. And where God is, there's only grace, there's only blessing, there's only goodness, there's only kindness, there's only peace and understanding, and so on. We have to stop going to war with each other. That's why war on this plane will never end, because you and I are constantly at war with each other. And when we stop being at war with each other, the world will stop being at war with itself. That's the way it works. There's no other way. So I bless you, I praise you, I thank you for every good thought, every good word, every good feeling, every good action that you're engaged in, because you are changing the world when that's where you are, and I am too. So trust the power within you, trust the presence within you, trust its glory and its magnificence, desiring to be all that you can be and express itself through you, the God you are. The God you are in the flesh, the image, the likeness of your Creator, the image, the likeness of your Creator, and the image and likeness of nothing less than that. You are the image, you are the likeness, you are the life, you are the light, and you are the love of that which has created you, sustains you, maintains you, and loves you unconditionally with a love that never ends. That's what we come to in prayerfulness. That's who you are, what you are, and so you are, and so it is.